Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this, which is our first proper get-together of the very long-winded Australian, Pacific and Asia Peace Builders and Conflict Resolution Network. As those of you who have been on these calls before, this is a chance for us to continue the process of getting to know each other and the work that we do. And what we usually do in these conversations is we have some general chat and conversation and updates, which is preceded by a feature storyteller. And this time around, we're lucky enough to have two feature storytellers. And I'll get onto those in a minute. We have, as I was saying before, a number of people who have given their apologies that they can't be here today. And for those of us who are here today, I want to begin that I'm coming to you from Wongal and Gadigal land here in the inner suburbs of Sydney, which is one of the the first sites of violence and dispossession in the country. And as we've just been hearing on the news today, they finally sorted out the wording of a referendum question for later this year. That's an exciting moment, and it marks steps forward on the journey that we have towards a more peaceful Australia. So I'd like to acknowledge Aboriginal elders past and present, and also the First Nations people that we have on the call with us today. So yes, we have, I think, a few people who haven't been in these conversations before, perhaps. So you're all most welcome. And what I'm not going to do is I go around and introduce each other first up. I'd encourage you all, while we're talking, to just sort of write something in the chat as a way of introducing yourselves, and then you can also say something later on as well. Because otherwise I think it's good for us to actually sort of get into hear from our speakers as soon as possible. And our storytellers this time in Nicola and Rowan, it's perhaps a little bit different from our usual storytelling in that they've got a specific report that they're speaking to here and having launched, which the Women, Peace and Security Civil Society Coalition, I think I've got all those words right, but not in the right order, has done a really fantastic piece of work capturing the voices of women and other groups on violence and conflict in Australia, and we'll be hearing more from them about that, and in particular from a First Nations perspective when Nicola speaks. So I won't introduce them in detail. They can introduce themselves as part of telling their story. I suspect, Rowan, that you're going to be starting off. Is that correct?
If that's okay. And if you can give me the then I will put the presentation up, if that's okay.
Yep.
Lovely. I think if you could give me the right to.
Yep.
Am I an admin? Sorry.
Yep. Where are you on my list? Rowan, meeting guest. I'll do that for starters so that you're big.
Oh, that's not necessary. While you're doing that, I can start by saying a little bit about the background of the research. So, hi, I'm Rowan Harvey. I am coming to you from the Australian Civil Society Coalition on Women, Peace and Security. We've been doing a bit of research, as James has said, and there are a couple of other people on the call who've been helping leading that research, including, I can see Barb and I think Ludmilla. So there's other people who can also speak to what we've been doing as well. And obviously Nicola's been involved, so it'd be fantastic to hear from her. Do I have the ability to share screen? If not, I can just speak to the
I think if you actually, in Teams it works, if you hover your mouse over your taskbar or wherever where the presentation is open, then there should be a share this window option.
I've got, oh, here we go. There we go. Here we go. Hopefully, can you see that?
Yes.
Great. Lovely. So yes, we are an independent coalition of civil society organizations, individuals, people with experience of and expertise in women, peace and security issues. Obviously, when doing women, peace and security work, it's really important that your work is informed by the voices of women and gender diverse people. So in October and November of last year, we brought together 215 women and gender diverse people and asked them about how they view peace and security issues. So I'm going to present some of the research here before we hear from Nicola. We asked them 3 particular questions. So what do peace and security mean to women and gender diverse people in Australia, and what do they mean to you? How have your perceptions of peace and security shifted in recent years, and what was behind that? And what are the top 3 things you'd like to see the Australian government do? So for most of our participants, they describe peace and security as being about much more than just the absence of war. They recognize that peace and security are very much interconnected, but not interchangeable. So it's possible to live in a peaceful country like Australia, but not to enjoy peace and security yourself, which is why we need to join up our thinking on the domestic and the international aspects of peace and security. And to feel secure and at peace, our participants told us that they needed personal freedom and the ability to realize human rights. So that's everything from freedom from, which is freedom from violence, oppression and fear, and freedom to make choices, live well and realize their rights. A lot of participants spoke about our immigration system. They spoke about social safety nets. So there's a real wealth of information in there, and I can share the links in the chat afterwards so you can dig into that. They wanted to live in a country and community where everyone is respected, valued and afforded equal rights. And they talked about how it makes them feel insecure to see other people being exploited, oppressed or othered. They want robust governments, civic structures and institutions. They want to feel like their governments are doing the best that they can for them, and that they're operating in structures and institutions that are robust, respected and honoured. They also very much wanted to see harmony between people and the planet. So ecological protection, climate change, these things came up a lot. Obviously also war and conflict resolution without resort to violence. So those were the things that they particularly raised. So when we asked them whether their perceptions of peace and security had shifted in recent years, the vast majority told us that it had, and most said that their worry or concern had increased. So only 10% of participants told us that their perceptions have remained the same. And we found that the things that they most frequently cited were climate change and climate disasters. And at the time we were doing this research, there was obviously terrible flooding going on across much of Australia. So there was a lot of empathy, I think, for people going through that. Then obviously we have the context of numerous global conflicts, including Ukraine and the aggression of countries, and Australia being drawn into other countries' conflicts. Things like AUKUS were raised. So that was a concern that society is becoming less caring and more insular, and that you could see that in how we treat various communities within Australia, including asylum seekers and refugees, and also how we're attacking and shrinking social safety nets, and how we talk about the people that rely on them. And the last 3 things were erosion of trust in government and public institutions. And that was true across the board politically. So, you know, we had one person who talked about vaccine hesitancy. There was distrust of government there. So there's across the political spectrum, people have a distrust for public institutions. The COVID-19 pandemic was not very high on the list, but it was definitely there. And it's continuing fallout, including increased racism and hate speech. And then cyber insecurity, the rise of misinformation and the role of social media. We found that an intersectional approach is really key. So for example, refugee and asylum seeking women raised concerns about the different rights and entitlements to people on different classes of visa. They told us that Australia's immigration system actually compounds difference and discrimination and left some women more vulnerable to to abuse than others. They talked about the mental health of migrant women, those dealing with trauma in the aftermath of conflict or experiencing isolation and abuse within Australia. They were very concerned about issues faced by women in that situation, facing domestic violence, for example, having reduced access to shelters, social services, and emergency support. Age also was important. So we found that women over the age of 65 said that the process of aging had impacted their perceptions of peace and security, and particularly for those that are living with disability or long-term health issues. So they really stressed the need for reliable quality public services. For women under the age of 24, they really drew connections between peace and security and a sense of physical and personal safety. They talked about protection from street harassment and gender-based violence, and that perhaps reflects the fact that they shoulder a disproportionate share of the burden of those social problems. So the actions that participants wanted us to see done. So in particular, they really wanted to see bridges built between our domestic and our international dimensions of peace and security, calling for much greater alignment between domestic, foreign, and humanitarian policies. And again, many saw their own security as inextricably linked to that of diverse women across Australia and in other parts of the world. And they really wanted to see a holistic response from the Australian government that really responds to the intersecting and compounding nature of insecurity, conflict, and crises. So there were 5 broad headings for what they wanted to see. The first was enabling all Australians to achieve peace, security, and their inalienable rights. Repositioning Australia as a global and regional peacemaker rather than a strategic military partner, which is very timely right now. Rebalancing priorities to make Australia a world leader in diplomacy, peace building, mediation. Respecting and recognizing the agency of diverse women and girls and enabling them to lead. And ensuring that we're at the front of global efforts to address climate change and insecurity. So that is most of it. We had 3 really clear themes that emerged. The first was about interconnectedness. So as I've said, drawing those links between insecurity and crises at the local, national, and international levels, and addressing the ways in which the crises compound and intersect. So the second one was intersectionality and intergenerationality. So again, ensuring we understand how different groups perceive insecurity and how those perceptions are impacted by personal experience, experience of intersecting and overlapping forms of oppression. And the third point was localization and agency. So in ensuring that those who are most impacted have the space and resources to lead responses. So that is where we are now. Sorry, that was very fast and a quick run through. What's very exciting is we are about to, I'll just come back to the room. We are about to, on Monday, have a big meeting, pulling together 30 participants from the research so far. James, hopefully, if you're feeling okay, that will include you too, and a few other people on this call. And we're going to come together and look at those headings under which we want to see action, and draw up a concrete set of recommendations for what we would like the Australian government to do. We'd love to have everybody involved in the process going forward. We'll be taking that into advocacy and shadow reporting on Australia's National Action Plan later in the year. If you'd like to join the coalition and be part of that work, then just email me on rowan@wpscoalition.org, and I can make sure that you're in all the right spaces. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And I will pass over to Nicola, who was part of the research and has been fantastic to share her insights too.
Thank you so much, Rowan. And it was lovely to see the presentation again. There's always new things that come out of it as well. So yeah, hi everyone. My name is Nicola Parkes, and I'm calling in from Wurundjeri country today, a part of the Kulin Nations here in Melbourne, Victoria, or Naarm. I am a proud Taungurung woman from my mum's side, and on my dad's side, Irish and British heritage. And I'm going to just talk to you about, firstly, about my experience being a participant in the research with the coalition. And yeah, firstly, it was fantastic. like I've spoken to other participants, we did listening circles, and a lot of participants from diverse backgrounds were coming together, and I would say it was a very culturally safe space to talk about issues that are coming up in community and kind of filtering it in to this coalition for advocacy. So yeah, a massive thank you to the coalition and those who are on the call today, and again Rowan, for organising and facilitating these listening circles. It's a great opportunity to get women together to be able to talk and have agency over things that are impacting them. So I wanted to give a shout out to the coalition before I start. And yeah, just I guess I'm here today as a participant, and I just want to clarify that I am a First Nations woman, but I do not talk on behalf of First Nations people. We are a very diverse set of peoples across multiple areas, space, land, country. And you know, our experiences vary depending on if you're rural or if you're urban, what color skin you have. So yeah, I'm not talking on behalf of First Nations people, but I do want to talk in the capacity where my work experience has led me and kind of the intersections with my mob and other mobs in the Victorian region. So yeah, just a little bit about my work history, so you can see kind of where my framing is coming from when I'm talking about these recommendations that the coalition have put up. Is my background is in international peace building, so I've been lucky enough to work with Conciliation Resources in their Melbourne branch, and I can see some colleagues ex-colleagues on the call. Tessa, lovely to see you again. So yeah, I was working across their Southeast Asia and Pacific team, yeah, working with local community-based organisations and kind of seeing the work that they do and really kind of capturing local agency and kind of conflict transformation in local contexts. I've now been a bit of a trader and gone to the state government, but I work currently in the First Peoples State Relations group here with the Department of Premier and Cabinet, and I work across 3 teams. One of the teams is the Treaty Strategy and Negotiations team. The other one is the Truth-Telling Commission Engagement and Response team, so the Europe Commission Response team, and also the Policy Communications and Social Participations team. So here I'm kind of seeing, you know, the intersection between peace building, international peace building, and kind of the area in the Pacific, and also localized peace building, and kind of seeing treaty, voice, truth, and come out and kind of seeing the governance about how that's working. So yeah, I think the report that the coalition has brought out really kind of gives voice to those intersections, you know, particularly in there, they've got, you know, 5 key areas for action. And I really just wanted to touch on 2 of them that I think are really important for both of the areas of work that I've worked in, which is rebalancing priorities to make Australia a world leader in peace building, diplomacy, and mediation. Of course, all of you in the call would be coming from peace building background in some capacity, and this is so key after the news this week about the submarine purchase, and just I'm sure local peace builders are just shaking their heads over money going into securitization rather than local peace building efforts and connections and relations. So yeah, that's one priority that we really want to see the government commit to. And then another one is the area for action is around respecting and recognizing the agency of diverse women, girls, gender diverse people, and enabling them to lead. And this really comes to when we talk about voice, treaty, truth, and kind of, you know, if how women in this area or diverse genders are leading kind of this localized approach in Australia and or outside of Australia. So yeah, I really think it's important for women who are experiencing the impact related to peace and security issues have space to be able to talk about how that is impacted and actually lead responses and lead kind of ways governance can change or can benefit people being impacted. So that's another key area of action that the report talks about, that I'm very much about. And of course, very hot in the press at the moment as well, as James mentioned in the acknowledgement. Yeah, talking about the referendum, and it's just going to get more serious as we go this year. And it would be really interesting to see kind of how local agencies actually played out in the media and the public sphere. But yeah, I guess they're just some kind of reflections. I don't want to talk too much. I'm very aware that this network is also to connect with people from across different, spaces, but really happy to, be contacted. I'm pretty sure maybe I don't know what my name says for my camera, but it might say some silly room. So if that's the case, please do feel free to contact me on LinkedIn, on Messenger. So it's Nicola Parkes. You would have received the email with my name on it. So please do feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or if you would like to contact me in regards to anything else. But other than that, just really interested to hear kind of the work that everyone in the network's doing, and to really keep in mind about how this kind of intersection of peace building in other contexts links with the respect for First Peoples here, and kind of the local efforts that have been occurring over many generations with First Peoples, but maybe not actually called peace building and called different things, and kind of looking in different ways that that First Peoples, and particularly staunch women, have been advocating for community to have rights and justice within this context too. So with that, I'll stop, and I'll pass back over to James. But thank you all for listening and giving me space today.
Okay, thank you to you both, Nicola and Rowan. Yesterday I was listening to a podcast, the Pacific Wayfinder podcast, and there were a couple of Pacific women who were talking about some of their priorities for security and so on. And one of them, Dr. Teresa Mecki from PNG, was talking about the difference that she experiences in terms of her sense of personal safety and security back home in Port Moresby and in Canberra. And she just talked about, being able to walk from ANU to the bus stop at 10 p.m. and feel safe. And I mean, and there was, it made me sort of stop and think. On the one hand, this is a great positive change that she's experienced, and she just talked about the emotional freedom that she had as a result of this. But it also points, when you sit it alongside the sorts of things that you guys were talking about today, it talks about the how complex these issues of the way that people experience conflict and violence are, and how very personal and contextual it is as well. Even at the same time as there are, underlying systems and structures that always need to be dealt with too. So yes, this isn't really a question; it's more an observation. And it was that sense of the contrast and connection between two different countries on this that just made me think and wonder on this. I don't know if you have any reactions to that before others join in with questions.
Nicola, do you want to? Or I'm happy to. I think what you've just said and what Nicola was saying is reminding me of something else that I should probably have mentioned as well, which we've commissioned Sandra Creamer to do an additional piece of work for us, talking to First Nations women in particular. So she is currently in the process of speaking to First Nations women across Australia. She's going to be bringing some of that research to our meeting on Monday, but we're hopefully also going to work that into a report and be able to share that as well. And I get to talk to her pretty much every other day about the conversations she's having, and it's absolutely fascinating. And I think today we were talking about First Nations women and housing security, how you cannot feel safe and secure if you cannot feel like you are going to have a dependable home that you can live in to the near and medium future. So I think what you've said is true. And often when we talk about women, peace and security work, we're thinking about international peace building and treaties and all of these things that are very, very important. But it also, we need to always focus back down to what is actually happening in the lives of women and gender diverse people, and what security actually means to you and me, and recognize that much the same for certainly the 200 women we spoke to, and the consultations that are still ongoing.
I just had one comment as well, if that's okay. Yeah, your example, James, gives me thoughts around a conversation I've had with a colleague before who comes from Papua New Guinea as well. And yeah, she's, you know, this kind of like being racialized, so from externals, and like kind of walking through life and having this capacity where she has to have a bigger mental load because of how she's being racialized against. And yeah, I think that just shows true that you could have, you know, physical safety, but then this like kind of emotional safety and security is completely different because of racism and white supremacy. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of put that out there as well.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, feel free to put up your hand or jump in. You're all on mute at present.
I have a question for both of you, which is, I may have missed this at the beginning. Am I on mute or not?
No, I can hear you. Yep.
Great. Okay, sorry, I just saw someone else had raised their hand, and I apologise, Ludmilla, I maybe jumped in over you. I was curious about the age range, and I wondered how young you went, if you had an opportunity to speak to young women and how their responses compared to the responses of older women.
And I'll just actually, if you're asking a question, do introduce yourself. That was Gillian Howell, who's a peace and music researcher, to use a short bio, and a marvellous person. But yes, go on.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries.
So this is probably one for me. So with the research, we didn't actively set out to speak to anybody under the age of 18, though we gave space if they wished to and could get consent from a parent or guardian. You know, children and security is another area that and girls and security is another area we probably do need to look into. But for the purposes of this research, safeguarding concerns, we just felt that that was a necessary step. So we did have a number of younger women, and there were a couple of listening circles held at universities. And again, what really came through strongly from the research was that all groups were interested in personal and physical safety, but younger women in particular. And they talked about street harassment, feeling unsafe in public spaces. And that was something, again, we know that younger women face a greater burden of those issues. The other thing that they really raised was online security and online safety, which far more than other age groups, which again, I think speaks to the impact that those issues are having on them. So those are, again, issues we need to carry through into our recommendations and our advocacy going forward. And fortunately, a number of younger women will be joining us again at the roundtable on Monday. So we'll hopefully be able to present back on next steps.
Carrie, I was just going to add one thing, not to do with the research, just to say it's really lovely to see you, Gillian. I have read so much of your work and am very impressed with the way you've incorporated creative approaches to peace building. So just wanted to say it's really cool to see you in that. Love your work.
Thank you. That's lovely to hear. Thanks a lot.
That's why we have these meetings right there. Ludmilla, you've got your hand up and you're on mute.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Ludmilla Quitko, also with the Australian Civil Society Coalition on Women, Peace and Security. Thank you very much, Rowan and Nicole, for the presentations and the comments. Really, really good to have had a little bit of an opportunity to stand back from our work, having been in the middle of it for a while, and about to delve into it again on Monday, and to hear it sort of so clearly put together and analysed, and really your reflections, Nicole, are really fantastic. Very much appreciated, and so interested in the new work that you're doing now as well, and hearing about that at some point in the future. I just wanted to share a little bit about where I've been the last 2 weeks, which is in New York at the Commission on the Status of Women meetings, where the theme was actually technological innovation. And I just wanted to reinforce the message about online security and online safety and how that was being utilised in framing not just security in terms of personal security, especially around gender-based violence issues, both in domestic contexts and international conflict contexts, but also the implications of that whole technological development within broader security contexts around gender-based violence, around militarization, around the implications for climate change. So to see how those issues are also being dealt with. While we don't deal with that stuff in a lot of detail in our reports at the moment, they're the sorts of things that we anticipate that we might have an opportunity to discuss throughout the rest of the year as other issues come up throughout the coalitions. So I'd urge you also to stay in touch with us on the website as well and see the members meetings that we're going to be having throughout the year as well to discuss some of these things too. Thank you.
Thanks, Ludmilla. Suzanne's asked a very relevant question in the chat, is where and when can we get hold of the report?
I can post a link to it in the chat. So give me a second and I will pull it up and I will post the link directly.
I think it's been posted by Jeanette on looks.
Yeah.
Jeanette, you're a star. Thank you.
Terrific. Okay. But yeah, thank you, and also Ludmilla for the update on the New York happenings as well. I mean, I've been particularly interested in this conversation with about sort of the Women in Peace and Security Network and Agenda, because it sits alongside and very close to what our, I guess, somewhat broader peace building network is talking about. Yes, and so it's very helpful to sort of get an exploration and understanding of what's happening. Do we have some more questions in relation to the report or the presentations? Well, you think?
Can
Sorry,
I ask
yes.
a question, James?
Fire away. Yep.
I think I didn't really hear because there was a truck going past, but I think there was some talk about online safety, and that was raised by younger women, and I was wondering, and I know that someone said, oh, we're doing some more work, but I just wasn't sure whether that work was covering online safety, because it probably is something that older women such as myself are not so conscious of, being a new, because it's a new thing. So apologies if you've already talked about this, but I wouldn't mind hearing it again. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, from our side, this is obviously, I think, new territory in a little. That's probably not true for our members. We've got obviously incredible knowledge and expertise amongst our members. So the next step for us, I think, is drawing that knowledge from the various groups. So at our roundtable, we have participants from a couple of different universities, including university students. And certainly this hopefully is going to be one of the things that we talk about and that we can build concrete recommendations from. So I think that's not a very comprehensive answer, but it is something that we will be looking at going forward. And I think, Ludmilla, you might want to say something more. You've obviously come back fired up about these issues, and probably with a wealth of knowledge from the various women's organisations you've been talking to over the last couple of weeks. So I imagine it's something that will be discussed in our spaces as members bring that knowledge back to us.
Yeah, just really briefly, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, as most of us recover from jet lag, which is fairly serious at the moment, that we'll get a chance to pull together a couple of webinars and meetings with people from the civil society reps who went to New York to talk about the implications of technology. And not just, I mean, the marvellous thing about being there was to be able to see the change and the intersectional and intergenerational issues that were represented and connected to technology in terms of security issues in the way that we probably haven't thought about them before. So stay tuned is, I guess, the best thing to say at the moment. Some of us are fairly fresh off aeroplanes, and our luggage is even fresher off those aeroplanes because it didn't quite come with us. I'm speaking about myself. But I did want to add something to what Rowan has said. About 7 years ago, the Coalition did a similar piece of work called Listening to Diverse Women Speak as well. And what's interesting is to go and have a look at that report and compare it to the preliminary findings that we have out of the most recent research and see the issues that didn't come up. And technology was one of them that didn't come up during that time specifically. But there were the broader issue of looking at security in terms of human security. The broad meaning of security is the one that really comes through strongly. And I think the other thing that's a really big strength in this piece of research is the greater diversity of women and gender diverse people who've had an opportunity to participate in this. And we really want to build on that. And that's thanks to a lot of the work that Rowan's done in terms of making the connections, but also in really reactivating our initiative to really reactivate the Coalition as part of this and get more civil society organisations engaged. So we're looking forward to a fairly busy year, starting on Monday once again. Thanks.
Thanks, Ludmilla. Gillian, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you. It's possibly more of a comment, but I'm going to try and weave it into a question. Interest in how the process that you used maps onto something like the Everyday Peace Indicators work, and if you found indicators that might offer ways of measuring change in different communities, or if that is maybe another step. And just I'm interested in that methodology in general, so I was just curious to see some similarities. Wondered if you had any things you could say about that.
Ludmilla, I saw you nod your head. Was that a nod of recognition, or? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Rowan, if you want to comment on the methodology, but also I think that's something that's potentially going to come out of the next piece of work that we do. We just haven't discussed it as formally as you've raised it there, Gillian. But yes, yeah. Do you want to just let people know, Rowan, about what the overall methodology was that we used to get to where we were?
Yes, so most participants, like Nicola, also feel free to jump in if you want to. So participants like Nicola took part in listening circles. With the First Nations women that are currently taking part in the research, it's yarning circles, which is fantastic. So participants would take part in small group discussions, and we would take notes during those discussions. So we had those 3 questions as the framing, but some of the participants sort of, through listening and speaking to each other, where it sparked ideas, it sparked information sharing, and we had some really rich conversations. We also did a survey, so a smaller number of participants took part in the survey, which asked the same questions as well, and those tended to give some participants went really deep, some gave us more brief information, and the listening circles, I think, were where we got the richness. Nicola, I don't know if you want to say anything about how the methodology worked for you.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add about the listening circles, and what I thought worked really well was what they would do is also send a link of the notes being taken in the chat. And the reason that I think this is really good is for agency. So for women to actually want to, if they don't feel like talking or if they feel shy, that they're able to write directly in, and then, or if Rowan has kind of made notes about a conversation that's occurring and it's being misinterpreted, then the women can then correct it. So I found that really helpful as well, being a part of as a participant.
Thank you. And I think the limitations obviously are we mostly spoke to women who are online. And so that is something to think about going forward. Again, a great piece about the First Nations research is it's taking place either in person or over the phone as well. So we're perhaps reaching women who would not know how to necessarily jump on a Zoom call or who wouldn't participate in that way. So that's something else that we need to think about going forward. I think the coalition has done this before and really effectively at in-person events. Some of these events did take place in person. So some leaders of these circles did get women physically together, which was fantastic. But I think from the coalition side, the ones we ran were online. So yeah, things to think about for future. I did also think just something to mention for the online safety bit. We are hopefully going to be doing convenings this year. So bringing together experts and members on Myanmar, Afghanistan, and Ukraine. And I think women human rights defenders and online safety it will be part of our thinking as we're developing those spaces on how we keep participants safe. But I think hopefully it should also feed into that. If anybody would like to join those meetings and maybe be part of helping us raise those issues as well, again, Rowan at wpscoalition.org, and I can make sure that you're looped in.
Can I ask a question of you, Gillian? What would you, sort of listening to the overview of what's been presented so far, what would you say about where the links seem to be to you? And then I'll say something about what we're about to do as well.
Look, I haven't been through an Everyday Peace Indicators process, but so it's my reading, something I've come across through reading. But I'm interested in the way that it invites people to nominate their own indicators of what feeling peaceful or feeling safe is like. And I was reminded of it when, James, you made the comment about the woman from PNG comparing walking to a bus stop at 10 p.m. at night and that sort of different degree. So everyday peace indicators, it can be things like we're not hearing the dogs barking at night time, or there's not lots of rubbish strewn around the streets. So they're often quite very local ideas. So I kind of felt like some of the responses that were coming up in the discussion as you were presenting the research was offering some potential overlaps with that. And I work a bit up in the Kimberley with a community up there, and so I'm also thinking about the peace building research questions that come up in my research, and interested in the ways they might map into that space and how they change really in a First Nations context. So yeah, it's not a very formed connection to offer at the moment, but just I feel like there might be something there. Yeah.
It'd be great to chat more about that.
Yeah. Can I just respond to that, Gillian? I think that there is very much something there, and one of the things that we might go back and do, and Rowan, I'm just saying this off the top of my head here, so don't take it as gospel at this point, is to go back and actually look a bit more at the language that's being used, and certainly in some of the sessions that I was involved in over the last 2 weeks, and work with Pacific women on climate security issues. They were talking about climate security and their local economy experiences in ways that were very much localized about what would peace and security mean if there was a storm coming or if there was a cyclone coming. What would be the chief indicator that you were safe during that time? And one woman came up with a wonderful statement about that my wood was dry. And if we heard that out of context, we would say, what is that? What does that mean? But the reason that was such an important indicator of security was that selling wood was the means by which she maintained her economic security. So that was a local measure of that peace and security. And I mean, that's just an isolated example I remember off the top of my head. But I think that there are many more things that we can hear, and the work that's going to come out of the Monday meeting that we're having, as people start to articulate what the meaning of that peace and security means in terms of action. I think what we really need to keep an eye on is the language that's being used and how we can perhaps map that alongside of whether we call them indicators or points, we've actually talked about how are we going to measure change, how are we going to measure the actions that we recommend. We can start, I mean, in other words, that's really indicators as well, but maybe we need to just map that out a little bit more clearly than we're up to at the moment. Yeah. Thanks for raising that, Gillian.
Okay, at this point, I think it might be good. We're down to about 15 people, and just to do a trot around the room now, just so we can recognise people here. Because I know that we have people up in Papua New Guinea who are on the call, as well as various parts of Australia, and possibly I don't know where else. So it's just nice to be able to go around, just 30 seconds on who you are, and if there's something that you're working on in peace building, etc., or something that's exciting about the conversation today, whatever works for you. And I might invite, and I'm going to invite Margot to go first, who's a muted participant. Nothing from Margot. Okay, well, next one on my list is Weiss. Hello, Weiss.
Oh, and you've unmuted me. I'm Weiss Shurenga, based in Sydney. I belong to the Quakers Religious Society of Friends, and I'm active in the Raising Peace Network, but also in the New South Wales Ecumenical Council, a group of Christian churches, very varied and very challenging to find peace amongst Christian churches. We've got a great history of being awful to one another, and I'm trying to keep the peace.
Yeah, Weiss is also the linchpin of the Raising Peace Network, which I'm also involved with, and the various events that we put together each year. Next on my list is Taisi Kalama. Taisi, are you able to speak today?
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, good. Thanks. It was great listening to you all. So I'm from Papua New Guinea, but I'm at ANU, currently studying for a master's in applied anthropology and development. And these conversations always get me, what's the right word? Excited, but I feel burdened at the same time because I am from the central province of Papua New Guinea. 3 hours. I live in Port Moresby, and I was just having this conversation 2 days ago about how, as I prepare to go back home and to reintegrate back into the community back in Port Moresby, I was thinking, oh man, I'm going to drive out every morning and I'm going to strategize on where I'm going to put my phone in the car, or probably in my pocket, or tuck it somewhere in between my clothing, so that when they hold me up on the road, they can take the car, they can take the bag, but my phone has everything. And that's like my mental health right there. So I was thinking, at the very micro level, peace and security at a very micro level, that's very concerning for me before I can think about, regional. I'm sure there's a lot of conversations happening regional, but what's happening internally can have a ripple effect throughout the region as well. It's just all cross-cutting, and one thing leads to another. So I mention of that.
Yeah, that's a lot to have to contend with, Taisi. It's worthwhile sharing a piece of news right now of what some members of the network are embarking on, and this is a big, scary and exciting project about, in the most brief sentence, a peace conference in Papua New Guinea, a conference for peace in PNG, and various of our colleagues are actually up there now, and this emerged from a conversation between us and some PNG counterparts, looking at bringing lessons from Bougainville and the mainland together, focusing on youth and having strong youth and women participation in it too, and that the emphasis will be, peace building is the lead, and that's what it's going to be about, and it's hopefully will happen later this year, and it's quite exciting. And I think Taisi, if you're interested, it would be great to have you as part of the conversation as we put that together, because it's all starting to kick off. now.
Yes, thank you. That would be great. I'd love to be part of this. I'm also listening to the conversations you're having about Indigenous and the young in circles, and that's something that we don't talk about too much in PNG. So I guess we've lost it all when we stopped respecting land, because land is attached to our culture and the language and the values that we have, and we're so diverse. But with development coming in and modernity, that's becoming a problem. So how do we address that amidst the diversity should be the, I think, gist of the conversation. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody want to say anything else about that, or shall we keep on doing the round the room? Okay, next on my list is Sabila Nazlani. Hello.
Hello, I'm Sabila, based in Melbourne. I'm currently working with Conciliation Resources. So it's a peace building organization. It's really great to be here and listening to everyone's talk. It's been really insightful. So thank you.
Thank you. Bob, you there?
Sorry, yes, Barbara Dwyer. I'm from WILP, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and from the WPS Coalition. So I probably don't have anything to add from to what all our speakers have said, but we're looking forward to what will be the result of all the rest of our consultations this year.
Cool. Thanks, Barb. Patricia and Rebecca, I guess you're in the IEP office, are you?
Yes, that's right. Thank you. It's lovely to be able to join all of you today. And I really just wanted to mention that we had an International Women's Day event focusing on women, peace and security. And what we did is we invited many of our IEP women ambassadors and other participants involved in our programs to give their responses to the three questions that we ask in the listening circle. And so we've actually been able to put together their responses from that was actually a webinar. And we said it was going to be all anonymous with no personal details attached. And we will be forwarding those responses to the coalition. So it was good because we were able to hear women from a big range of countries, from Argentina to Sri Lanka, Nepal, Zimbabwe, Philippines, Mali, Rwanda, and it was just wonderful to get the range of issues as how they felt they were addressing the issues of women, peace and security. And we just listening to some of the feedback that you gave, Rowan, there was a lot of similarity in many of the responses, and that those issues of interconnectedness and intergenerality, intentionality, localization were very much at the fore. So I'd just like to, hopefully we'll be able to contribute some of that when we meet on Monday.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Next, we have John, or possibly Tanya, who's hiding behind the black square today. John Langmore or Tanya Miletic, are you there? Doesn't look like it. That's the Initiative for Peace Build. Oh, yes.
John Langmore here.
G'day, John.
G'day, James. Can I just say that my interest in Papua New Guinea is that I lived there for 13 years and leading up to independence, and loved it and love it still. So I'm hoping to play some role in this. I think the idea of having a conference makes very good sense, and I look forward to supporting that.
Thanks, John. It's been like the sense of excitement and support around it is really quite striking. Everyone seems to be latching onto it. It's wonderful. Who shall I go to next? Don't have all that many left. Lindsay, you've been a very strong silent type today. Still silent. Mute.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks, James. Yeah, Lindsay Mill, basically with James and Weiss and the others in the Raising Peace Network, the primary one for me, and also the United Nations Association, New South Wales Division, been involved there for at least 30 years. So yeah, and in various capacities. Yeah, what I guess particularly what I liked was the idea of security, of having a broad meaning of security in relation to that issue, but also exploring the personal sense of security that Rowan talked about. And I really feel those three key themes of interconnectedness, intersectionality, and intergenerality, and localization, they for me seem most pertinent in the context of where we're at in both in the global situation, but also locally, and what we're trying to establish. So, and also, Ludmilla talked about finding a language through which to talk about peace and security from the status of women developments. So yeah, all of those things really seem pertinent, and really, for me, they're key to where we're moving at the moment. So thanks for that, and good to see everyone on the link.
Yeah. No, I think that finding a commonly widely accepted language for peace is actually hugely important right now. That we only seem to be able to talk about conflict and war in terms of envisaging possible futures. The last one I want to bring forward is Jeanette. I think, Ludmilla, we know what you've got coming up. So yeah, Jeanette.
Thanks, James. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for organising this. And it's great that I'm on your mailing list and we have the opportunity to sort of, go outside perhaps some of our normal networks. For those of you who don't know me, I'm from WILF, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. I do my best to try to support Ludmilla and Barb with the making WPS happen within WILF. And it's not the only thing I do in WILF, though. Ludmilla and I have got a very late night meeting tonight because we're both on the international board. But I just think that WPS is really important. I'm really excited to hear about the conference in PNG, and that would be great to have some great sort of building of the WPS concepts and what it actually means for people there. So I think we do have some great things coming up for us in the future, and it's lovely to have seen you all today. Thank you.
Terrific. Okay. Wow, we're bang on 3 o'clock. Any other sort of thoughts, questions, observations before we sign off? I've thoroughly enjoyed this chat that we've had today, and especially I'd like to thank Rowan and Nicola for taking time to tell the story of the research. It was really, wonderful for me to hear it a second time, and Ludmilla, 10th time probably. But yes, it's been an absolute pleasure. So any other final observations before we finish?
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
for organising it, James.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no. Okay.
Thanks, James.
Right.
Thank you.
James, how do we stay in touch on the PNG conference?
I'll write you an email. Yeah, so that we can ensure that we like there's going to be I guess an interested circle of people. We're sort of at the stage now practically where we are prioritizing building up the counterpart core in PNG beyond the couple of people that we have there already. So that will so once we have some great level of equivalence there, then we can sort of broaden it out to ensure that we can take advantage of your passions and experiences as well. Oh, Alex has arrived a bit late. Hello.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Alex. We're literally just finishing up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I must have mixed up the time.
Yeah. Well, it's all been recorded, so you can watch it back.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice to see you, Alex.
See you all.
Hey, Nicola.
Alex, don't know if you want to say hi.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.